Think you all have to press OK. So I'm just going to open up and welcome everyone to our Council Advocacy and Conservation Networking conversation this evening. A couple of us, at least a few of us, were on the policy call from National Audubon just prior to this. As I explained earlier, we had scheduled this actually long before we knew that the National Audubon was going to do the policy call. So people like Tess and I were able to do double duty. I don't know if you got to eat Tess, but we're wanted to make sure we heard that as well. And again, I asked people to put their affiliation in the chat, if you will. Ted, glad to see that you got on. I know you registered late and got the link, which is good. And a couple of things we're going to do this evening. We're hoping to get a report from Jim and Scott about a very interesting proposal at the state level. We're hoping to have Arly tune in to give us an update from the Defenders of Wildlife on the Westerman bill and the concerns about the Endangered Species Act. And then Tess and I are going to do, mostly Tess, but we're going to do a little bit of a presentation on how you can use the new chapter membership and supporter report to help find the folks that live in your chapter territory that are interested in advocacy. So we're gonna talk about how that can be a tool, because I know there are a lot of chapters that don't necessarily have a conservation committee, may not have people that have stepped up, and we'll talk a little bit about how to use that report, even if you have pretty much a program where you do a chapter membership as your main focus for attracting to your folks to your meetings and to be involved, that this may become an important tool that will encourage you to use for a variety of reasons, but we hope we'll be able to do that. So since Arly is not on yet, I was going to throw it over to Jim Brown. Jim is the Audubon Mid-Atlantic Director of Policy, and to Scott Parkhill, who's the Forest Program Manager for Audubon Mid-Atlantic. I know they want to talk to us for about the next 10 minutes about a very interesting idea that I think will resonate with a lot of the chapters. So, Jim and Scott, it's yours.
Sure, thanks, Lee. I'm gonna probably tackle this first and then hand it over to Scott. It's good to see everybody. I think I've met almost everybody, but for those that I haven't, my name's Jim Brown. I'm the policy director at Audubon Mid-Atlantic. And yeah, Scott and Tess and I are excited to talk about this idea that we've been thinking about. I know it's not new for some of you. Um, but I'll just cut right to it. A lot of you know that our policy work at the state level in Harrisburg has focused a lot on energy issues in my time with Audubon, at least over the last few years, and to a degree, watershed issues. And we're still going to be focusing on those, but there's been an effort working with Scott and his team to really elevate the good forest work that they're doing, both forest conservation and healthy forest management and bird-friendly forestry throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And we were thinking of ways that we could do that in the continue to elevate that work and highlight the resources that are needed in the state budget and policy work and in conservation work in Harrisburg, ways that we could get Audubon more in front of legislators on more bird specific and forestry specific issues. Because as I mentioned, it's been a lot of energy and watershed issues over the last few years. And we saw something that our colleagues in South Carolina were working on, where they got a state migratory bird introduced through legislation at the state level. They already had a state bird, and they introduced a state migratory bird, which was the prothonotary warbler, and that became law in South Carolina. Um, and so what we were thinking is that something that could be replicated here in Pennsylvania. And we were thinking, what are the species that are charismatic, that people can identify throughout most of the state, and species that are heavily reliant on Pennsylvania's forests, particularly mature forests, oaks and maples, and then a species that would complement the ruffed grouse in a way that other species couldn't. And so, as you know, the ruffed grouse is very uh, edge and young forest, and the species that we were thinking of could be more in mature forest than hardwood forest. And so through all those parameters and speaking with the Game Commission and DCNR, we came up with the idea of the Scarlet Tanager to be that could be something that hits all of those buckets I just mentioned. And Scott is able to share a little bit more about what the tanager means to Pennsylvania's forests and vice versa, and how Pennsylvania fits into the tanager's migratory patterns. But before I hand it over to him, just wanted to say that that's sort of how we got to the tanager, and bouncing the idea off a few different people. And we're very excited to start socializing this idea more. We'd love to hear what you think. One other thing I didn't mention is we were looking for a species that's of the greatest conservation concern, and the tanager is one of those. Um, and again, not something to compete with or talk about replacing the ruffed grouse at all, but something that could be complementary in terms of the different types of ecosystems they require and live in. And then the only thing I'll mention, and we can talk more about this, but also mention that it was something that has the potential to be a fun and energetic way to get Audubon in front of legislators in Harrisburg, as opposed to some of the more um, frankly, partisan issues that have come up in the past around energy and uh, conservation funding in general. So that's the big reveal of the concept, and I'll hand it over to Scott, who can talk a little bit more about what the tanager means for Pennsylvania's forest specifically.
Yeah, thanks for that lead up, Jim. Yeah, I think Jim puts it well in the sense that, Pennsylvania being such a predominantly forested state, we were thinking, what is a bird that exemplifies not just the landscape of Pennsylvania, but maybe has some connection to our kind of our working forest heritage, that sort of thing. And Scarlet Tanagers are kind of a nice I don't want to say antithesis, but kind of like a nice buddy for the ruffed grouse to gain. And I think that's going to be kind of how we frame this, because we all love the ruffed grouse, and we're not in any way diminishing that. But our state bird is getting a buddy, and that's the state migratory bird. The ruffed grouse obviously not being migratory, and representing those younger forests that Jim talked about. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, we have the scarlet tanager that represents those more mature forests, our oak hickory forests that we're so well known for, and are so important to our migratory birds. And the Scarlet Tanager kind of fit really well in there. As Jim mentioned, we were looking for a charismatic species. It's that bright red, the very distinct call that you tend to hear through a lot of the state. And just looking up some of the numbers, Scarlet Tanagers actually occur throughout 78% of Pennsylvania during the breeding season. So a lot of people have access to them. And during the pre-breeding season, so during migration, they can be found in actually 90% of the state. So they're a bird that a lot of folks in Pennsylvania should be able to find for themselves. And even though Pennsylvania only represents 6% of Scarlet Tanager's global range, our state contributes 13% of the global population of Scarlet Tanagers. So if you look around, that's actually the largest contribution of any state. We looked at states like West Virginia and New York, and they actually have like 10 to 11%. So what we do here in terms of managing our forests can actually have a pretty big impact on Scarlet Tanager populations at a global level. And being a species of greatest conservation need, we wanted to elevate the importance of protecting that bird, but also the habitat that supports that bird and a lot of our other birds. And a little fun fact I discovered while looking this up: tanager, the word tanager apparently comes from an indigenous South American word that means small, brightly colored bird. So that's kind of a fun little fun fact there. But yeah, so and as Jim mentioned too, chatting with folks at DCNR and Game Commission, a lot of folks when you think, well, what would make a good state migratory bird? And then when people hear Scarlet Tanager, it's like, oh yeah, that would be a good one. So we're excited to use the momentum on this to make those inroads with legislators and hopefully have a little bit more of a presence in the state legislature. So
Yeah, Jim and Scott, do you foresee what the next steps would be to make this an actuality? And then I would like to just open it up for comment after your segment, so that I think we're going to find a lot of positive response to that proposal. But what would be the next step for us to be able to support this happening?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're very curious to hear reactions. I know for maybe half of you, it's not new. I'm looking at the names and I'm trying to see who we've started to talk about this with. But for some of you, it is new. So, curious to hear people's thoughts. It, uh, if we do this, which we're Audubon Mid-Atlantic is excited about really doing it. We're going to hire, well, we've already engaged with Ezra Thrush and his lobbying and public affairs firm. So we would work with him and his firm. Next steps would be identifying a bill sponsor, ideally a Republican and a Democrat. We've talked a little bit about it with the governor's office. Nothing firm from them yet, but they were interested in learning more. But that so to Lee, to answer your question, next steps would be really, if this is something that the chapters and the council were interested in supporting, it would be coming to Harrisburg with us and talking about what the tanager means in your chapter footprint and how and the types of habitat that it relies on in your chapter footprint, so that folks in Harrisburg get a better understanding of the relationship between the Scarlet Tanager and the forests, and then the threats to the forests that exist in Pennsylvania, and then therefore the threats to the tanager, and just making more of an awareness about that sort of is an expected byproduct of talking about this potential bill. Ideally, we want to get the bill passed, but our on their goal in this is to really elevate the threats that Pennsylvania's forests face and get the chapter network in front of legislators in Harrisburg as good resources to understand what those threats are. But in terms of the bill passing, there's a year left to do it. Well, less than a year now, but the session goes until December. Once the summer hits, it really slows down. It's an election year too. So the bulk of the work would be done in this winter and spring into early summer, and to try to pass it. And if it can't be passed, we'll at least get Audubon and Audubon chapters in front of legislators across the state talking about birds and forests. And then we try again next year.
Yeah, it's sometimes just the kind of thing, if it doesn't get through before election, sometimes a lot of stuff gets through after election,
Mhm.
before they go on the recess. So real
Yeah.
possibility.
And the thinking, and then one other quick thing about the strategy too. The thinking is that this would be it's not, it's not like something that people would come out against. And so for the people that are supporting this, it's a feel good thing that both Republicans and Democrats can work on together in Harrisburg that doesn't have to become this a political um
Yeah,
lightning rod. So that's part of our hope too, is that this is something that once it gets more socialized, it might be a little bit easier than something that is everything else that's going on in Harrisburg right now.
indeed. If anybody wants to raise their hand and unmute, any
I
comment
see,
or question
I
before we
see
shift to the Endangered Species Act?
I see a good question from Laura in the chat asking what the 6% meant. So I encourage everybody, if they have a chance, to poke around the science tab of eBird. That's kind of my secret weapon when people ask me bird questions. But if you look up Scarlet Tanager and then you filter by subregion Pennsylvania, there's a lot of different stats, and a lot of the stats I talked about today come from that analysis. So the 6%, Pennsylvania represents 6% of the modeled breeding season range for Scarlet Tanagers. So Scarlet Tanagers will spend the breeding season anywhere from, Kentucky, all the way out to like almost to the edge of Arkansas, all the way up to New England up into subboreal Canada. So Pennsylvania of that region only represents 6% of that modeled region. So being such a relatively small area, but having such a disproportionately large contribution to the population kind of speaks to our forest type, I think. They really key in on our oak forests. And that was actually one of the reasons why they are used as the species on the sticker for bird-friendly maple, which is a program in Vermont that's expanding into New York and actually expanding into Pennsylvania this year. So this is a program to manage maple sugar bushes for bird habitat. And one of those criteria is increasing species diversity. And what they found is that, when you start bringing in some species like oaks and softwood inclusions into an otherwise sugar maple stand, you get species like Scarlet Tanagers that really rely on that species diversity. So
Good. I think you partially answered Barbara's question that she put in the chat about the economic benefit. So
yeah,
to coincide with the the maple bush.
I'd say yeah, sure. Sugar maple. I think also we have a very a lot of people don't realize this. The largest sector of our ag in Pennsylvania is hardwoods, is actually forestry. And I like to remind our legislators of that when I meet with them. And that connection with oaks, I think can speak to a lot of things in terms of sustainable forest management, how we deal with invasive species like gypsy moth outbreaks, and a lot of other forest health issues that can kind of threaten forest bird habitat, but also sustainable forestry are ones that scarlet tanagers are going to be sensitive to.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. And I think, as well, that the notion that it's a neotropical migrant is an important component to all of this in terms of our connections to the Southern Hemisphere too, in terms of Central and South America. Extraordinarily important. Just a real quick poll. I don't have one to put on the, for you to fill out, but a thumbs up if you think this is a great idea. That's good. Be great if you thought it was good, Scott.
I don't want to skew the results.
That is great. Alice, you had a question?
Yeah, I think it's more than great idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. Um, I I think there's a lot of opportunity to raise awareness of the bird, our forests, migration with the legislators and with the general public. And coming from a small chapter that doesn't have an advocacy committee, I think it would help us identify people who might be willing, who would get behind this because it's not a contentious issue, but we'd also be able to identify people who would work with us for more contentious issues. So I think it's a great starting place for us. I love the idea. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Alice. And so it's something we'll want to stay tuned in and see how the council and our chapters and other conservation partners like DVOC can help. And I did want to point out too, the Scarlet Tanager is a species of concern, but it's not endangered, correct? So is it on the watch list?
I believe I know it's a species of greatest conservation need just because I authored the the entry for the upcoming state wildlife action plan update this year. But I think it falls into that category of keeping common birds common. We have
Yes,
a lot of scarlet tanagers, and we want to kind of take care of them before they start to become rare. And we have seen some declines, so trying to stay ahead of that is the idea with the scarlet tanager.
that's great. Well, that's thank you. Thank you both, and hope you'll hang on. And very pleased to move on to Arly Henniger-Voss, who is works for the Defenders of Wildlife, and she's the PA in New Jersey organizer who has worked with us in the past, has been on past programs, and I think we have been a benefit and a help for some of the work to defeat some of the attacks, especially in the Department of Defense budget, to get some really dangerous bills that would have, I guess, taken 20 million plus acres that are managed by the Department of Defense out of protection with the Endangered Species Act would have really, really gutted it. So With that, Arlie, I know we're not done. There's a look ahead. You can share your PowerPoint. I think I made it so multiple people can share. So if you want to share your screen or you're just going to talk, but I think you had some slides.
I did. I decided not to show you guys slides because most of you have been on calls with me before, and I don't want to rehash a lot of the same stuff. It's a lot of the kind of similar information we've gone over before. But I wanted to give you guys an update on a lot of the things we've been working on. One of the things that Lee alluded to was the NDAA bill, which had an amendment on it, which would have prevented the ESA from being enforced in any areas that are associated with the military or military-related operations. So that was a really huge deal when we were able to get all four of the folks that we contacted, all four legislators, to vote no and ultimately help defeat that amendment. That said, it's never good to grow lax. The next vote we had was on wolves, and we unfortunately did not succeed with that vote. That was bill to delist gray wolves in the lower 48. And unfortunately, that did pass. I will say, I'm hoping that I've heard a lot of the legislators were really swayed by showing some kind of graphic pictures of dogs and you know attacks and things like that, which were very biased. But I have hope for our next votes. And with that said, our by far biggest concern seems to be coming up. If anyone has ever been on a call with me before, you've heard me talk about the ESA Amendments Act of 2025, sometimes referred to as the Westerman Bill. It is a bill that's been proposed by Representative Westerman. And this is by far the greatest threat to the Endangered Species Act that we've seen in Congress. And so this is a bill that would kind of comprehensively dismantle the ESA as we know it. It attacks the ESA from many different areas, from dismantling or weakening the consultation process, which is the process in which experts are able to try to create solutions to reduce harm on endangered and imperiled species, weakening protections for threatened species, and hiring the administrative load of protecting those threatened species, making it very difficult to add species to the list of protected species while making it much easier to fast track animals through delisting of taking away their protections without kind of proper process, and also being able to rely on any science, state, local, tribal, regardless of quality, instead of the current measure, which is the best available science. So there's a lot in that bill, and there's more, but those are kind of some of the key highlights. Unfortunately, that did pass through committee shortly before the holidays. And so now it could be brought to the floor at virtually any time. We have seen some rumblings that it might be brought to a vote. And so this is kind of what we are full speed ahead, trying to get ahead of and make our voices known to our legislators about. And so to that end, there's a couple things. I can send Lee a link. We have kind of a sign-on letter that is just a basic opposing this bill. And you can sign on, and then we show legislators how many folks in their district have signed on. A really big thing that we're trying to do is for all four of the districts that we are active in, which are PA's District 1, 7, 8, and New Jersey District 7. So those are Representatives Fitzpatrick, McKenzie, Bresnahan, and Keene. We are trying to meet with the representatives themselves. And in order to do that, we need a lot of people to say that they want to come meet so that we can really show the legislators that there is an overwhelming interest in their constituency for this issue. And so to that effect, I am once again asking people if they are at all interested in meeting with legislators and live in those districts, please let me know. I am also, of course, going to be running classes and whatever else support people need to try to help people be comfortable before going into any meeting. And I think the last thing we're working on is letters to the editor. So if anyone, especially in those districts, is interested in writing to their local newspapers. If you are a scientist or someone who is related to that field, an op-ed also is awesome. And we can help provide, we have existing language that you can just tweak and we will submit for you. Oh, and the last thing, I know this is a lot, but the last thing is we're trying to get local organizations to sign on, just kind of like individual people, to say that they are opposing this specific bill that would dismantle the ESA. So if any of you are involved, if you have local Audubon chapters, if you have bird town organizations, if you have separate organizations that you think might be interested in that, then I would love to speak to you further about how we can get together and have you sign on that letter.
That's great, Arly. I wanted to indicate that you did do a nice article in the January edition of our Drummer. So if people want to go back, or they can find it on our website as well with some of that information. But the scary thing is how fast this can turn around. And I just wanted to use it as an occasion to reinforce we need the chapters to have a representative or two to the Google group that we are trying to create. I'm happy to say that Neely Shah is back from 3 weeks in Egypt. And he, with the president of Liberty Bird Alliance, is coordinating the Google group. Tess and I are involved along with Laura and Perry on the council's Advocacy and Conservation Committee that we're forming. But we'd like to send out a welcome letter by the end of this week or over the weekend. So if your chapter has not signed up for the Google group, you can email me. You can email the Pennsylvania Audubon Council at gmail.com, or you can go back to the current edition of the Drummer. I think there was a reminder. And Tess and I are going to work together as well with some other names so that we can put that Google group together. The reason it's important, the Bowbird bill, the wolf bill, the action on that happened like within 48 hours, and we needed to get the word out. Facebook and email and other kinds of things. We tried. Wish we could have been effective with that, but the Google group, will hopefully connect all of us, our chapters and conservation partners, so that when something like this threat comes down the pike, we can at least alert the key contacts in each chapter so that they can turn around and take some aim at their congressperson. And when we talk about the chapter membership and supporters report, you'll see how that can be useful too for getting the word out to people that might take action for some of these kinds of things. So the Westerman bill, that might come up pretty quickly, unless federal government shuts down at the end of the week and the House goes home on for a month and a half and not do anything. But don't want to predict anything. That's a pretty critical thing. The other thing I'll indicate is that I had the opportunity to go with one of our colleagues from Penn Environment to Fitzpatrick's Langhorne office with Bucks County residents. My chapter has a portion of Brian Fitzpatrick's, the first congressional district, and we were able to talk to one of his aides about this, and each of the individuals, in a very comfortable way, talked about how important this bill and the endangered species and their enjoyment of nature is enhanced, by knowing some of this. The species that are being protected. Able to talk about the bald eagle, and we're talking about taking the congressman to go see some bald eagles at Peace Valley. We're going to wait for it to be a little warmer, but make sure we're able to do that. I think Fitzpatrick was the only congressman in Arly's target that also voted against the Boebert bill that took wolves off the Endangered Species Act. The other two targets in Pennsylvania voted with the Republican majority, unfortunately. Any comments or questions for Arly? Go ahead, Sue. Unmute.
Yeah. So I live and I'm a representative in Western Pennsylvania by Mike Kelly, a Republican. He's a nut. So when you don't ask for us to approach those, or is it because it's a waste of time because he's so out there?
So I wouldn't say talking to your legislator is ever a waste of time, but I will say they are less likely targets. And in part because of that, we don't really have the resources so much to organize around there. So if that's something you feel passionately, I always encourage you to reach out to your representative and put that on their map. But we're not able to organize meetings and things like that over in the Western area.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Laura.
Arly, my chapter already did sign a letter that was written by the Endangered Species Coalition.
Mhm.
Would that be the same letter that you're talking about, or is the Defender's letter different?
I believe this would be different, but if you have a link to that, that might actually be helpful. I can put my email in chat. Yeah, we were looking for district specific letters. So, in each district,
Oh,
it's only things that are organizations that are active within that district. But I will put my email in chat, and if you could send that to me, actually, I would really appreciate it.
sure.
And Ted, you wanted the same kind of contact information from Arly?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Arly.
Of course.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I went with Arly to a meeting with Representative Fitzpatrick, and it was worthwhile. But Arly, to maybe bridge one of the previous questions that we had, if someone is going to a meeting out west or somewhere else that's kind of outside of where you're able to do it, are you
Mhm.
able to provide them information to help them make that easier and tell them what you're asking for, what they should ask for?
Yeah, I'd be happy to send resources, and I can let kind of Lee know anytime I have something coming up where I have kind of a talk about it, so that that information can be disseminated. Anyone who wants to attend is welcome.
That's great. And I know you have like fact sheets and some other kinds of things that might be in. I think we have something on the website with the Endangered Species Act information, Arly. We'll double check that, but I think it's somewhere on our website. Sue would probably know better than me, but I think we have that there as a resource.
Yep, and I actually have an updated fact sheet, I believe, for specifically the Westerman Act as well.
Right. Yeah. I think most of what you had provided before was the Diggs Amendment that we were successful in defeating and getting the three Republican congressional members in Eastern Pennsylvania and the one in New Jersey. Also, I think the one in New Jersey was also a freshman, right? And I think so.
Mhm.
So
Good.
Arlie, we'll certainly do whatever we can again. Like, do you want us to try to line up? I know the two of us met with you with one of Mackenzie's staffers. Do you want us to try to identify like more people, like 4 or 5? I mean, what is it that you, and then would you be trying to set up the meeting again the way you did the last time, or
That
how?
would be amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So the ideal is maximum people. If I had 50, 100 people saying, we want to go meet with our legislators, I would love that. So especially because once we schedule a meeting, a lot of times schedules conflict. So even if you have 10 people who say they can come, maybe only 4 can actually make it. So absolutely anyone you know who might be interested, please, please, please let them know, invite them, put them in contact with me. I am contacting their offices. It is often more difficult to get a meeting with the legislator in person as opposed to the staff, but that's part of why we need as many people as possible to express interest. Because when people do say they're interested in meeting, I'm able to say, listen, we've got this person from this area of your district, this person from that area of your district. And when they see, 10, 20 names, it's a lot more compelling than if there was just 5 people who were interested in coming.
That's great. And if there's not any other questions, we'll move on to the third segment.
Well,
And
I saw some questions in the chat that I,
oh,
I
okay,
can address.
go ahead, Arly. I'm not.
Sorry.
That's fine. Go
Um,
ahead.
so Perry, I see you suggested organizing a public event at legislators' offices. Right now, that's not something we're considering just because it tends to be more effective to have a sit-down talk with legislators. Um, Potentially, if they're not willing to meet with us, we might do something like that. But I think it might be more an effective use of our time to get lots of people to sign on so we can submit kind of conglomerate letters. Um, and then let me see. I saw Zach said to reach out to chapters. Is there This is something that I've been wondering before. Is there kind of a good email list to use for the various chapters?
That's what we're trying to do with the Google group, but each
Okay.
chapter does have a, and sometimes like Zach's chapter, that there's generic, Appalachian Audubon president or whatever. I don't know it off the top of my head, Zach. But there's a generic thing. Otherwise, you need to know the name of the chapter president, what have you. But that's why we're trying to set up this Google group, and we think it'll be in place, Arly, by the at least, I guess we have about 10 or 12 initial names. We'd like to make sure every chapter is represented and conservation partners. So like Perry and her colleague for the Conservation Committee for DVOC, I believe they're both on. But that way, anybody in the Google group is able to put a communication that goes out like a blast to everybody in the Google group. So if action's needed, like we did with, wish we had with the Bobert bill, that say, hey, here's what you need to do, bang, 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 here are the facts, and we can get that out so that then the contact in each chapter can communicate with key people either on their board or if they have a conservation committee, that would be the effective way to try to get out as fast as possible a communication and a reaction. And then just one other comment about meeting with our legislators. I thought it was particularly effective, and Michael or Liz and Barbara might have some comment about this, but to be able to talk personally about, interaction with an endangered species like a bald eagle, and how important it is to see them in the wild, to know that they were. I shared this story. I think the last breeding pair in Pennsylvania was at Pymatuning Reservoir, and they were expatriated from the rest of the state. And here, because of DDT restrictions and the Endangered Species Act, you can almost go out in any given day to a location not far from where you live and see a bald eagle. So there was interest in having the congressman go out and see a bald eagle at Peace Valley, where they breed.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have to say I found everyone I've worked with Audubon has been so knowledgeable, and it's really clear to see when we go to these legislator meetings. So I really appreciate you guys and all your advocacy and all your knowledge about wildlife and birds. So if anyone in the meantime wants me to reach out to their chapter, if you have contact information, you can drop it in the chat and I would be happy to reach out. And just to reiterate what Lee was saying about timelines, unfortunately, a lot of times we only know that a bill is going to be voted on a couple days ahead of time. So it really is like a very fast turnaround. So everyone be on watch. But I'm happy to reach out to anyone and get you guys involved.
Harley, we always appreciate your leadership and help with us.
Thank you so much, Lee.
That's good. All right, we're now going to move on. Tess, you can share. I know you have some slides that we can talk a bit about the use of the new and improved, I would call it, the monthly membership and supporters roster that chapters get. Again, I know that many of our chapters in the state have their own chapter membership. I know that I can speak for Liberty Bird Alliance and Valley Forge Audubon Society that we consider all the National Audubon members in our chapter territory our members. We don't have a separate chapter membership, but we use the roster pretty faithfully. But even if you have your own chapter membership list, referring to this roster is going to be more important than ever. And I think Tess will give a little bit of an overview of what's been improved. I think some of you know I served 2 years on the National Audubon Society's Action Fund Board when it was first established. And one of the things we really tried to do was to say, is there a way to get the folks that sign on to the petitions or the calls for action that live in a particular chapter territory? Can we share those names with the chapters? And there was a reluctance to do that for a variety of good reasons. But now it's happened. And we're going to show you how you can use that. And to Alice's point earlier, where you might find some people that are advocacy oriented, willing to write a letter, sign on their name, that you can use to find in your chapter territory and perhaps build that kind of chapter-based or organizationally based uh, conservation committee that may be interested in your local issues as well as state issues like the Scarlet Tanager as our migratory bird, or some of the other issues like the Endangered Species Act. So, Tess, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lee. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. Great. So I wanted to give like Lee said, just an overview of what these changes are and why they were made. And this might be repeat information for some of you if you were able to go to the webinar that Kim Brand and her team put on. So some of this will be repeat information, but I distilled it down to the really vital parts and added a bit about how we might be able to use this new data. So I apologize if this is redundant, but good information bears repeating. So bear with me if this is a repeat for you. So some of the background information about these rosters and why they needed to be changed. So Audubon shares those membership lists, as you know, for national members that are part of a chapter's area. But they previously only included, as you also know, people who donated $20 or more a year. So that excluded all the people who took action in your area, who were a part of Audubon in some other way than financial donations to Audubon in your region. And so this has been changed because there's a need that was expressed for more people to be included in these, for it to be expanded beyond just membership, for more emails so that folks can add those emails to their existing databases of contacts, increased attendance to events, virtual and in person, and that also includes advocacy events as well. So if there is an in-person opportunity, increasing those numbers as well with people who care about birds in your territory. And just generally more complete contact information. And that includes some of the things. Lee has a great screenshot at the end of this presentation that shows what that data looks like. And it's just a lot more information than you previously had access to. Like Lee said, this has been something that people have expressed a need for a very, very long time. And so based on not just the 2024 annual report data, but it was flagged in the 2024 annual report data that people were demanding more email addresses. They needed more data. It was just not that useful, the way that it was filtered down by the time it reached chapters. So some of the expansions and updates to these rosters that are available to chapters include online action takers, so people who have taken action via action alerts, signed on to letters, any number of ways to engage with Audubon action. Those people are now included in these lists. People who have the Audubon app or provided an email address for that app, and then people who are subscribed to the national email list and are regularly engaging with those emails. So there's some amount of engagement that's happening with those people, and they're all included in these lists. These include more email addresses and contact information overall for those folks. And like I said, additional fields as well, like districts, and some other helpful information as well. And these rosters are available to download from Box, which I'll preface by saying is a little bit cumbersome, but is manageable. And I'm here to help you with that, as is the national team as well, Kim's team. As I mentioned, the new names are coming from your service area, from your territory. And if they have consented to that information being shared to Audubon, again, it could look like a checkbox on an action alert. if you download the app, consenting to have your email address given to Audubon. Those people will all be on your roster. So that's how that information was collected. There is some measure of consenting to give your email address. We're not just scraping data without people's knowledge. And also, they wanted to point out too, there's the new membership form, and just to show you what this looks like, and any changes with that membership form from the national perspective. This was sort of the timeline. So you may have heard about all of this work happening in fall of 2025. They tested this out with some folks, and then they launched those rosters. One important note is on June 30th, the old platform will retire. So I just wanted to reiterate this, that there is an end date for the old roster system. So just sometime before June 30th, try out this new system and download the new rosters from Box, just to make sure that you have that data, and download anything you'd like to from that old system as well. Some instructions about accessing rosters, and I appreciate that this will not be very helpful, me just saying it to you right now, so I can give you these slides afterwards too, so you can have this. There's also, I have a link to the document that Kim created, Kim and Olivia created, that's really useful. This is just a really boiled down version of it. So that's kind of a longer doc, but this is the boiled down version of those instructions. You should have received an email to access your chapter's Box folder. If you didn't, reach out to Olivia and she'd be happy to send it to you. And those email addresses are just the ones that you, the primary email that you put on your annual report is what they use to send those to. If you open that email, you can click Go to Folder in Box. And then within that folder, there's a membership roster folder where you can access those rosters. And this is sort of the naming convention that they use for this. It should be fairly clear, your chapter's code, the month and the year, and then you can just download by right-clicking on it. So it's fairly easy to do, but again, boxes can be an endless labyrinth of folders. So if you need help with that, I can help you out with that. I just wanted to give some ideas for how we might be able to use this new information. And this is a really short list. I think there's a lot of possibilities with this new data. One thing is we can gauge general interest in advocacy work. So folks that you have not had access to before, likely those will be supporters. So you can filter. The great thing about being in an Excel sheet is you can filter supporters versus members. So you could reach out to some of the supporters who aren't on your previous lists and gauge their interest in advocacy work. So you could add them to those lists when you send out actions, to sign on to letters, whatever that might be. You can also filter by district. So if you wanted to activate members and supporters for specific policy asks, if Audubon or our other partners, like Defenders of Wildlife, are looking at specific districts or specific representatives, that can be really helpful information and really target that outreach in a way that we weren't able to before. Of course, gaining a wider audience for your events, so you have a ton more emails to reach out to. Granted, some of those folks might ask not to be on a list or say they don't want to be contacted, but you're going to have a lot more email addresses, even with those folks that don't want to be included. So it could potentially increase your attendance at events. And you might be able to plan specific outreach for areas where you previously haven't had many supporters or members. So it could be an exciting way to plan new outreach throughout your territory. There's a lot of other ways I think we could use this data. And I'm pretty excited to hear about how you all might use it. But I'm going to hand it over to Lee to just sort of go over this, what it looks like when you download that new roster.
Great. And this is UO4 is Liberty Bird Alliance's code all the way to the right-hand column. You each have a chapter code. U00 is Tiadot and Audubon, the very first chapter in Pennsylvania. So I think it pretty much represents when you became a chapter in terms of National Audubon. And part of the really the genius of the chapter system when National Audubon created it in the 60s and 70s was the realization that National Audubon has a limited number of staff and outreach, and that the chapter network became a great way to interact with the members of National Audubon within different areas of the country. So that was the logic behind it. I won't go into a whole lot of history and detail. That would take about 5 other webinars and things of that sort to make it explainable. But this is just a piece of the roster that I want to go through. To the left, this is, you see column L all the way over to column T. The columns previous to L are the names, the addresses, the zip codes of the people that are on this list. But I want you to look particularly at this list. We're looking at P. You can see a supporter is not a member here. Here are supporters. They're not members. That means they probably didn't pay the $20. But I want you to also see that every supporter has their email. Every member does not necessarily provide their email. So we have looked, and it's less than half of the members of our chapter territory provide their emails. It's particularly important because we have moved from a mailed newsletter that we used to do annually or biannually, and it's all electronic now, which makes it a lot less expensive to run a newsletter, and distribute a newsletter. And we can also distribute our updates and everything else. But it's hard to get to every member because about half, less than half, provide their email. We put all the supporters on our email distribution list, and they get our newsletter, they get our updates, they get some of the other kinds of activities. So the thing that's intriguing here is you have the emails. The reason you have the emails is because they signed on to an action alert from National Audubon, needed to provide their email, and it also provided their address and then their district. It automatically indicated if there was something that was federal, you get the congressional district. Here's S. So you can see the districts here. And for Arly, here's somebody that lives in our chapter territory, but is in the 1st Congressional District. That's a little bit of portion in western Montgomery County that bleeds into Bucks County that is part of Liberty Bird Alliance's chapter territory out near the Telford and Sodderton area of southeastern Pennsylvania, which means nothing to you across most of the state, but it's a little piece of the 1st Congressional District. And because we're urban, we have quite a few congressional districts because we're in a pretty populous part of the state. The other thing is that let's look at this. There's a supporter here somewhere where we have the congressional district, but they didn't sign on. Here's one. They didn't do something at the state level, but they were only interested in the federal level. So we know what their congressional district was. So they took action on a federal action, but not on a state action, which is kind of interesting to see in Q and R where there's some blanks where the supporters are. But the interesting piece here is that you have this list of supporters, and this is a Excel spreadsheet, so you can sort it to get all the supporters. I have to tell you that the number of supporters that were added to our general membership list was significant. Again, I don't know what that is for like Seneca Rocks, how many supporters came on your membership report. But for us, it was extraordinarily significant. In the thousands of additional names that we had we have a pretty large chapter territory because we're the Philadelphia chapter in portions of Montgomery County. So the people that are politically active that are showing up as supporters was a significant addition. We have, as a chapter, we have an advocacy list. We maintain it on Constant Contact. So we're writing to each of these folks since we have their emails to see if they would like to be on our chapter's Constant Contact list so that if we do a conservation alert or action alert, from the chapter level for something that might be Philadelphia or regionally based, they can get an email and potentially act on it. What we don't have at this point with that type of approach is we don't know how many take action. That's something we're going to have to need to work on. At least for Audubon, there is an indication of when they put out something in the state, or if Jim puts out something for people to sign on to for Audubon Mid-Atlantic, that's a state issue. You do get a roll number of the number of people that actually signed on. I think there's something in the order, Tess or Jim, I think statewide, you must have 10 or 12,000 names that are on your action list. Do you know offhand? You may not.
It's more than that, I think.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's more than that.
It's a lot,
Yeah,
so
it's a lot.
that's good to know too. And that's when people, will automatically be assigned, and you'll get a letter. If it's a letter, it'll go automatically to your, if it's a congressperson or a senator, well, we know our senators, but the congressperson, it goes directly to them with their name. Same way with a state senator, state house district. So it gives you, that kind of thing. This is the district for the state house. So I can tell you the 153rd is Abington, the 154th is Cheltenham. Pretty much Cheltenham, a little bit of Philadelphia, because I know those districts in particular. And this is just the first of thousands of names on our chapter roster, members and supporter report. So I wanted you to see it. If you don't use this regularly, because you have a chapter only membership list, that's the one you probably do most of your mailing to. I would really advocate, if there's opportunities, to grab those emails and include these folks in some of your activities as well. You might find that they're interested in becoming members. I know Audubon has an incentive program to try to convert these people to members, and the work that we do at the chapter level may be engaging to some of these folks that have not throwing $20 towards National Audubon. Some people do more than that in coffee in a day at Starbucks. But the idea is that this may be a useful list even if you have a chapter based membership, and would really encourage you to reach out to all of the emails that are there. And I know you can use Mobilize. I think National Audubon provides that at no cost to chapters. We use Constant Contact and pay a fee, but we use that and segregate that list in a variety of ways. So I think this is the last slide, test. So I don't know if anybody has questions about it. How many of you, I guess we can, if we want to take this down, or if you have questions about the list, does anybody have questions about uh, the roster? Arly, you can see what we get, so we can find out. We could do a mailing to everybody in Fitzpatrick's office. Honey Hollow Nature Center would have that list. We would have that list, and we would know all of the members that are supporters that are in the first congressional district, as an example. So if we wanted to do anything specifically to Fitzpatrick, we could.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that, and I'd be happy also to reach out just to see if they'd be interested in meeting with Fitzpatrick as well.
Yeah, and then the Lehigh Valley Audubon would have Mackenzie's district, and then unfortunately we don't have a chapter up in Northeast PA and not Mackenzie. Yeah, this is the eighth. Yeah, but I think a portion of it is the Greater Wyoming Valley Audubon Society has a portion of that district in their chapter, and I think they're going to be trying to expand into Susquehanna County. So we'll see how that goes. So at any rate, any questions? Just unmute, or just if you love spreadsheets. I am not a particularly computer savvy person, but I was membership chair for my chapter years ago under the old system. But being able to shift to do everything electronically has really saved us a great deal of money, even though we don't have everybody's email. And we still do a couple of mailings to everybody on our list each year frankly, they're general appeals. We do a fall appeal and a birdathon appeal that performs very well, frankly. And, we use the list that way as well. Are there any questions?
Are we going to get a copy of the chat? Because I know like Tess just put some links in there and
Yeah, tell me how to save the chat, and I will do that. I think I clicked it.
If you click the three dots at the top of the chat,
Got it.
and it should allow you to save the chat. It might save it in a really weird place, so it might be hard to find, but it does save it after you click that.
There's the chat. Let me see.
I can save it too, it looks like, so I could.
Can you do that, Tess?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You
I'll
know
do
how
it before.
technologically proficient I am.
No worries. It's an
I
annoying.
say that every time I'm hosting
feature.
a webinar. I screw something up.
You're not alone.
Now, there we go. I can't save it, so if you can, that's good.
Yeah. Yep.
We'll get that out. And what will come out, I have recorded this on YouTube so that if we'll put that out in the February edition of the Drummer so that everybody can see that. Arly, if you need another article for the Drummer, please get that to me, if you can, by early next week. We'll put that in. And Jim and Scott, I'd love to put some kind of an article. You'll probably do it in the Audubon Mid-Atlantic stuff too, but if you're willing to share that, we'll get that out by the early in the second week of February.
We'll share as soon as we have it.
That sounds great. And then we'll make reference to this. Any other? Yes, go ahead, Tess.
Just one last request. So in similarly to the Google group that Lee was talking about earlier about conservation committee chairs or advocacy chairs from each chapter, I'm gonna put together a Google group of just chapter leaders. So that could be your president and vice president, or it could be just the person who checks their email the most often. But I'm gonna also have a group for chapter leaders. Probably won't be as frequently used, but just so I can contact folks when we have things that we'd love you to share with your chapter that aren't necessarily advocacy related.
Yeah,
if you haven't sent me your email for that, please do. Sorry, Lee.
I know Barbara Malt suggested that too. So like if a chapter president, she's a new chapter president and said, yeah, gee, we'd like to know how you do your your bylaws revisions or something of that sort. That it could be put, and would you share that with me? That would be one of the uses of it.
And that'll include the Maryland folks too. So it'll be really awesome to be able to get in touch with those chapter leaders as well. So if you haven't sent me the best email for that list, just get in touch. That'd be great.
That sounds good. I know that Michael Selleck signed off, but that chapter used to be the Bucks County Audubon Society. They just changed their name, going back to their roots, the Bucks, Honey Hollow Nature Center, where their offices are. So they're still a chapter of the National Audubon Society, but they are no longer the Bucks County Audubon Society. They're the Honey Hollow Nature Center, formerly known as Prince. So most of you don't know who Prince was, but that's all right. Very good. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Yeah. Could I don't think the rest of you want to hang on for this. Could I show to Tess the chapter report I have? Or maybe you can, I don't even have to show you. When we download those reports, they don't appear to be in alphabetical order. Or I can't tell who ended up on the top and why somebody is the last person on the list.
That's a great question. I imagine it is because of when they signed or when they took action or when they were added to that or when they interacted with Audubon. I think I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say, if you can download it in a spreadsheet, then you can manipulate that. Even I can manipulate the spreadsheet. So if I wanted just all the supporters, I can take that column, and you just put in it, ask them to ABC order, and just the supporters will show up.
Yeah, I'm looking and it doesn't look, it's not in alphabetical order. It's not by when they engaged because they go from like 2014 to 2020.
Is it zip code?
Oh, that could be.
Oh, let me take a look.
I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, that's a good
Not
idea.
certain.
I might be.
No.
Nope,
But
not-
you're right, Lee. That's the really nice thing about having it be downloaded as a CSV or Excel file.
Mhm.
Because you can manipulate whatever is the most useful for you, you can manipulate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's a great question. I don't know what
I
the
don't either. And I know, we can manipulate it. I think we have 16 bird towns in our chapter territory, and we can manipulate by zip code and then know, not necessarily like a municipality and a zip code could be literally there's one 19038, which is in 4 different bird towns, depending on where you live in 19038. But it is still something that you can, kind of tease out. Any other questions? Again, thank you all for signing on. We have the notes will go out, and we have the YouTube, and I think Tess has saved the chat, so we can get all that contact stuff out too. We'll send out the review of the just the text summary first, and then YouTube will probably be when people want to see it, will be in the drummer. We're good? Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Are
Lee.
we all for Seahawks this year?
I don't know.
See ya. Thanks, Lee.
Yep, yep.